Sarah and Daniel Fisher seemed like the kind of couple everyone envied. Charming, successful, and inseparable, until a hidden camera in their bedroom revealed a web of infidelity so twisted, it ended in a live-streamed execution that shocked the world. At first glance, Sarah and Daniel Fisher appeared to be the picture of a perfect marriage. They lived in a quiet, upscale neighborhood in Colorado Springs, surrounded by friendly neighbors and well-kept lawns. Their two-story home was always tidy, with flower beds in full bloom and wind chimes gently swaying on the porch. Daniel worked from home as a software engineer, spending most of his days in his basement office, coding and attending meetings. Sarah owned a boutique clothing store downtown that had become increasingly popular with local influencers. Together, they had a golden retriever named Max and a life that seemed, to the outside world, both stable and enviable. Their social media painted a flawless image. Vacation snapshots from Lake Tahoe, selfies at farmers markets, candle-lit anniversary dinners, and cheerful family barbecues. Friends often commented on how lucky they were to have each other. Even those closest to them never suspected anything was wrong. But as time went on, Daniel began to notice subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. She started coming home late, often with vague excuses about supplier delays or store emergencies. Her explanations were plausible at first, but they gradually became too frequent, too rehearsed. She began guarding her phone closely, never letting it out of sight, even when she slept. Notifications were silenced, and her screen always faced down. She'd giggle at messages and type quickly, then pretend it was just her assistant. Daniel tried not to overthink it, blaming stress or routine fatigue. He told himself that their spark was just dimming with time, like most marriages do. But in the quiet corners of his mind, suspicion was growing. And once it started, it didn't go away. Daniel didn't ask Sarah outright. Instead, he did what he did best. He used technology. Late one night, while she was asleep, he installed a discreet security camera in their bedroom, embedding it behind a shelf where it couldn't be seen. Days later, he added another in the living room, then one near the garage entrance. All three were synced to a private cloud storage account only he could access. What began as a gut check quickly escalated into a life-altering revelation. Within the first week of recordings, Daniel saw a man enter their home during the day. Sarah met him at the door, kissed him, and led him upstairs. Daniel watched in stunned silence. At first, he wanted to believe it was a one-time lapse, a terrible mistake they could somehow move past. But it wasn't. The next day, a different man. Then another, and another. Sometimes it was during work hours, other times in the early evening when Daniel had gone to the gym or taken Max for a walk. His heart sank. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every night, he reviewed the footage with shaking hands, unable to look away. The truth was worse than he imagined. His wife, the woman he had built his life with, was living a secret existence under his roof. And the more he watched, the deeper the betrayal cut. Something in him began to change. Hurt turned into anger. Anger slowly became obsession. Daniel's discovery did not stop with the first few videos. What began as isolated incidents soon revealed a horrifying pattern. Every few days, a different man would appear on the hidden cameras, sometimes even while Daniel was home, but preoccupied. Sarah orchestrated her affairs with chilling precision, timing visits between Daniel's meetings or dog walks, texting rapidly to coordinate exits and entries. In some cases, she'd usher a man out the back door moments before Daniel walked in through the front. It wasn't just betrayal, it was deception carried out with surgical skill. Daniel began documenting everything. He created folders for each man, labeling them by date and time. He took screenshots from the video footage, collected timestamps, and noted any identifiable features: tattoos, car models, brand names on clothing. He wasn't sure why he was collecting so much detail at first. Maybe part of him hoped there was still some rational explanation. But as the files grew, any illusion of misunderstanding disappeared. This wasn't emotional confusion or a failing marriage. It was a carefully concealed double life. He tracked license plates using online databases. With enough patience, Daniel identified where some of the men lived and worked. He scrolled through social media, shocked to find that a few were married themselves, one even with a newborn child in his profile picture. Another was a local police officer, easily recognized by the badge clipped to his belt as he entered Daniel's home. A chilling sense of paranoia took root. These weren't just strangers. They were men from the very town Daniel lived in. Some had likely passed him on the street, shaken his hand, smiled at him at community events. The realization was gutting. Daniel no longer viewed the recordings like a husband. He studied them like evidence. He stopped thinking of Sarah as the woman he loved, and began seeing her as someone entirely different, someone who had been acting for years. Every affectionate photo, every quiet night watching movies, every smile now felt like part of a grand performance. The trust that had once been the foundation of their marriage was not just broken, it was obliterated. By the end of the third month, Daniel had logged more than 30 different men. Some came back multiple times. A few were disturbingly young, barely out of college. It was as if Sarah had created an alternate reality, one in which Daniel didn't exist. In that version of her life, she was free, reckless, and entirely untethered by the commitments of marriage. The Sarah Daniel thought he knew was gone, replaced by a stranger who wore his wife's face. Sleep became impossible. Even when he closed his eyes, the images replayed in his mind. His home, his bed, invaded by others. He stopped speaking to friends and ignored calls from family. He felt embarrassed, angry, powerless. But somewhere in the spiral, a new thought emerged. If no one else knew what was happening, it was because Sarah had controlled the narrative. What if he took that power back? What if he didn't just confront her, but exposed her? The idea began to take shape, slowly and silently in the back of his mind. Daniel didn't lash out. He didn't scream, accuse, or pack his bags. Instead, he continued pretending nothing was wrong. Each morning he made coffee for Sarah, asked about her day, kissed her goodbye. The routine continued like clockwork, and to Sarah, everything seemed unchanged. But Daniel was changing. Inside, he had become cold and calculated. The betrayal had transformed him. He no longer wanted answers. He wanted control. Not just over the situation, but over the narrative Sarah had been writing behind his back. And he wasn't going to ask her to stop. He was going to end it his way. He began by upgrading the home's existing security system, telling Sarah it was for protection after a rise in neighborhood break-ins. She didn't question it. The new setup included motion detectors, thermal sensors, and high-definition surveillance cameras that streamed directly to a private server Daniel had built from scratch. But the real change came in the form of an isolated computer system in the basement, one not connected to the internet and protected by several layers of encryption. It was there that Daniel began storing everything: video footage, screenshots, audio files, and detailed logs of each of Sarah's visitors. The next step of his plan was subtle, but deliberate. Daniel started exploring forums on the dark web, anonymous corners of the internet where twisted minds gathered and watched the unwatchable. There, he studied how others had live-streamed events, hidden identities, and avoided detection. He absorbed every detail and quietly built a platform that would allow him to share what he recorded if he chose to. He called the project The Unveiling. The concept was simple but brutal. Expose Sarah publicly and permanently, not just to friends or family, but to complete strangers, to the kind of audience that wouldn't look away. He created a countdown page, just a black screen with bold white numbers ticking down. No explanation, no context, just time running out. He embedded it on a hidden site, and through coded language, he dropped the link into select forums. The mysterious timer caught attention. People subscribed, commented, speculated. Some thought it was a hoax. Others knew it wasn't. Meanwhile, Daniel began setting up the final scene. He told Sarah he had planned a weekend getaway at their remote cabin in the woods, something they hadn't done in months. A rekindling, he called it, a chance to reconnect. She agreed without hesitation. Daniel prepared everything meticulously. The cameras were hidden, the lighting arranged. He installed soundproof insulation days in advance and ensured no cell signal could reach the cabin. Then came the final piece. He sent Sarah an anonymous message posing as one of her lovers, suggestive and urgent, inviting her to the cabin early before Daniel would arrive. It was bait, and she took it. When she drove off that Friday afternoon, she didn't know she was driving into a trap. She thought she was continuing her secret. In truth, it was already over. Daniel followed her at a distance, silent and invisible, just as he had been for months. Only this time, there would be no footage to file away. This time, the recording would be live. At exactly 9:00 p.m., the stream went live. For a few seconds, the screen was black, and then it lit up with a dimly lit room. The walls were made of rough wood, and a single light bulb swung from the ceiling. In the center of the room was a wooden chair, bolted to the floor. Tied to it with zip ties and thick rope was Sarah Fisher. Her mouth was covered with duct tape, and a blindfold wrapped tightly over her eyes. She struggled, her head jerking side to side. Muffled sounds escaped her throat, but there was no one to hear, except the hundreds of viewers watching the stream from behind their screens, spread across the country and the world. A man stepped into the frame. He wore a black hoodie, jeans, and a plain mask. His gloves were thick, the kind used for heavy labor. His voice, when he spoke, was electronically distorted. No name was given, no identity revealed. But the tone of what came next made it clear this was personal. He stood still for a long moment, then turned toward the camera. The viewers had no idea what they were watching. The countdown timer had ended, and this was their reward. Some typed frantically in chat rooms, asking if it was real. Others watched in silence. The man began playing clips from hidden cameras, edited snippets from the footage Daniel had collected over the past months. One after another, the screen would flicker to a new scene. Sarah greeting a man at the door, leading him inside, kissing him, laughing. Then another, and another. All while Daniel had been working in the basement or out walking Max. Each clip was short, sharp, and undeniable. Between the clips, the masked man narrated cold facts, names, dates, license plates, the number of times each man had visited. He read from a list, methodically, almost robotically. There was no emotion in his voice, only a burning sense of purpose. He wasn't simply shaming Sarah. He was stripping her identity away in front of an audience. Every secret she had kept was now public. Sarah began screaming behind the tape, thrashing in her chair. She understood what was happening. The footage, the voice. She knew who it was. But there was no escape. The walls were too thick, and the cabin too isolated. She was entirely at his mercy. Then came the final moment. The camera zoomed in slowly on her face. The man stepped forward, now directly beside her. In one hand, he held a handwritten note. He raised it for the camera. "Justice is served." The viewers could barely breathe. The room fell silent, and the screen went black. A single sound followed, the unmistakable crack of a gunshot. Then nothing. The live stream ended instantly. The site disappeared within minutes. No backups were found. No trace of the video could be located online afterward, but the damage was done. Hundreds had witnessed it live. Screenshots circulated in underground forums. Theories and rumors exploded across the internet. Some were horrified, others applauded. But one thing was clear: something real and truly terrible had just happened, and no one knew what would come next. The morning after the live stream, the Colorado State Police received an anonymous tip directing them to a remote cabin deep in the Pike National Forest. The call was short, the voice disguised, and the message chillingly simple: "There's a body in the woods." Officers arrived by noon, hiking over a mile from the nearest road through thick pine forest and uneven ground. When they forced open the cabin door, what they found confirmed the worst. Sarah Fisher was seated in a wooden chair at the center of the room. She was lifeless, a bullet wound just below her collarbone. Her hands were still bound, and the blindfold lay at her feet. No struggle appeared to have occurred inside the cabin. It was as if she had been presented, judged, and executed. There were no signs of Daniel. His car had been found abandoned 20 miles away, keys left on the dash, doors unlocked. Search dogs were brought in, drones flew overhead, but no trace of him was found in the area. Back at the Fisher home, investigators discovered what they later described as a digital vault in the basement. Daniel's computer system was advanced, heavily encrypted, and filled with hundreds of video files cataloging months of surveillance. Every angle of the house had been monitored. Files were sorted by date. Face recognition tags applied to each visitor. The police quickly realized that this was not a crime of passion. It was planned, calculated, and meticulously executed. Word of the live stream spread rapidly. Though the original stream was deleted almost immediately after airing, it had already been seen by hundreds across various dark web forums. Police received dozens of calls from anonymous users who had viewed it, many expressing horror, some confessing they had screen-recorded parts of it. Though the exact footage was never recovered in full, screenshots began leaking. Grainy images of Sarah tied to a chair, clips of the masked figure, fragments of the betrayal laid bare. As news outlets picked up the story, the public response became chaotic. Some painted Daniel as a victim pushed past the edge. Others called him a cold-blooded murderer who sought revenge instead of justice. Online communities split between sympathy and condemnation. True crime enthusiasts turned the case into a viral sensation. Conspiracy theories exploded. Was Daniel dead? Had he planned to vanish all along? Did someone help him escape? Despite extensive efforts, the FBI and state authorities were never able to confirm Daniel's fate. No financial activity appeared on his accounts. No new digital footprints were discovered. It was as if he had vanished into the wilderness. Some believed he had taken his own life in the forest. Others insisted he was still alive, hiding under a new identity, watching the aftermath unfold from afar. In the months that followed, the Fisher home was sold quietly. The boutique downtown was closed permanently. The neighbors stopped talking about it, trying to forget the darkness that had lived next door. But the story never truly died. Online, people still search for the full video, still debate what drove Daniel Fisher to do what he did. And somewhere, perhaps far from Colorado, someone might still be watching.